If you asked me at the beginning of this year if Avatar Frontiers of Pandora was releasing in 2023, I would have said no. Reason for that is because a trailer for Avatar released quite a few years ago and then it went radio silent, absolutely nothing. And with this as well, Ubisoft over the past few years have not really done well. Every new IP and title that they've tried to produce has either been cancelled, is been severely delayed, Skull and Bones, or it's been released but has gone way below expectations, earning nowhere near what they were originally hoping for. It's also why right now Ubisoft are going all in on Assassin's Creed, and there's several titles in development. So this is a bit of a surprise, but Avatar Frontiers of Pandora has a release date. It's the 7th of December, so just in a few weeks at the time recording this video. And not just that, but certain creators were invited to playtest Avatar, and that footage has already been released. So with that, we're going to go through absolutely everything within this video. So firstly, let's talk about the release. 7th of December, and will be releasing PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and also PC. This will not be going on previous gen consoles, which is a different approach than what Ubisoft are currently doing. They've been trying to push previous gen for some of their other titles, even though it's not really going too well for them. But this is where it's interesting, because this isn't solely developed by Ubisoft, even though Ubisoft own the studio. It is Massive Entertainment, and Massive Entertainment are really getting things done. I think this is their best bet in terms of new IPs for Ubisoft, because not only are they working on Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, but they're also working on Star Wars Outlaws, which are fairly highly anticipated in terms of Ubisoft. We're not saying game of the year, but there's a lot of interest. Based on gameplay, this is a predominantly a first-person experience. There are certain parts where it may be third person in terms of cutscenes, but as a whole, it is a first-person experience. And what's interesting when going through all the gameplay, and a lot of other people have said the same thing, is that it feels familiar whilst it also being new. And I think what they mean by this is that you get a very Far Cry-esque feel to the game, with it being a completely whole new world with some new mechanics. Even just based on some of the trailers that Ubisoft released before anyone had access to the gameplay, you could see a bit of the Far Cry-esque gameplay and some of the lighting and just some of the scenery coming into Avatar, whilst there also being other aspects, such as being able to parkour and do these little animations where you're climbing through trees. Very Assassin's Creed-esque. But then all of this is done in a world where it isn't really assets that are crossing over. We're not seeing some of the beasts that we see in Avatar going through in Far Cry, although there of course is some wildlife. And with it being a completely new world, there's also additional mechanics to then tie this all together. We've seen from what has been released that many people describe it in this way, of it being something completely different from what Massive Entertainment has produced before, but there still being those similarities. In terms of what you do within game, there's gonna be a lot of exploring, and this will tie into the story, which we will talk about in a second. So from a Games Radar interview, they had this to say: "You'll be able to explore the world on foot, interacting with the beautiful, dense environments that Massive is engineering. Ride across the land on a dire horse, or take to the skies in the back of your very own Banshee or Ikran. We also know that you'll be able to wield familiar Na'vi weapons such as bows and staves, or grapple with weapons captured from RDA forces like assault rifles and shotguns." And just to link this back to that previous point, I think that's where that similarity is, in that with Far Cry, of course, you're going in full gun blazing most of the time, so that once you get these assault rifles or any other types of weaponry from the RDA, that's where it really does feel Far Cry-esque. But the difference is when you are a Na'vi and you're using their weaponry so that you can go through with bows or any type of staves or any other types of weapons that are a bit more native, should we say. The approach that you take here, as this is still an open world game, is really up to you. We've seen gameplay of those going full guns in blazing, very similar to what we just mentioned about the Far Cry-esque feel. So people going in, getting shotguns, getting assault rifles, and just trying to explode, destroy, absolutely ruin everything. On the other side of this, you then have the more stealthy approach where you can stalk enemies, take them out with a bow and arrow, and then slowly take them down one by one whilst still completing your objectives. Now, of course, this in a lot of cases with Ubisoft is going to be an option just with the open worlds that they're creating. I found that years ago with Ubisoft, you would be focusing more on that stealthy approach. Titles such as Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell really relied on it, but then they've made it slightly more open where you do get a bit more of a choice, with it still being slightly easier for you to go through and just go in full gun blazing. I'm hoping that there will be some unique paths which can be taken either for stealth and also for combat. We haven't really seen that as of yet. Another thing that's worth highlighting is gunplay. Yes, there are assault rifles, it has been highlighted, we've seen gameplay of it, although most people say that when you pick up these weapons, there's just something off about it in terms of gunplay. Now, of course, this is an open world game and not just there as an FPS, but with how many times people have gone through and picked up these weapons, it needs to be an important aspect, and it just isn't really up there in terms of being god tier or even top tier for that matter when it comes to gunplay. This has been feedback that was submitted to Ubisoft after the initial playtest. Whether or not Massive Entertainment actually goes through and makes any changes to this to improve it before release, we'll just have to go and wait and see. We can clearly see from gameplay that it's not bad, but it's also just not amazing. So unlike other games that Massive Entertainment has been behind where it is just non-stop combat, there's another side to Avatar, which is, I guess, a bit of empathy. Because you're not just trying to take down the RDA, you're also trying to heal wildlife, strengthen your relationships with the world, and trying to help inhabitants survive on the planet. There's more caring involved. And that's what brings us over to the story. In terms of the story, we will be going through a world which is unseen before. So we know the Avatar story based on the movies. This game was actually supposed to release last year with the film release, The Way of the Water, I believe it was called. It's been confirmed that the game will unfold in a previously unexplored region of Pandora known as the Western Frontier. This expansive open world, as described by Ubisoft technical art director Sebastian Lindlof, will grant players the freedom to navigate diverse landscapes ranging from lush jungles at ground level to breathtaking vistas high in the sky. The Avatar Frontiers of Pandora story will be a standalone installment in a whole new area of Pandora. So it will be aligned with what we do see within the movies, but its own sideline. It's going to be its own story. It's still going to be connections across because it is within the same universe, but it's still going to be its own separate story within its own separate location. You'll be playing as a Na'vi, orphan turned freed RDA captive. Our character will be as unfamiliar with the world as Pandora as what we are. Her story will see her working together with the Na'vi locals to fight back against the RDA and restore prosperity to Pandora. And if, as I'm going through that, it does sound familiar, yes, it does sound very familiar to Avatar when it was first released many years ago. Going into this, it's not going to be the craziest story or narrative that we've seen in a game before. It's pretty basic, but it does allow the opportunity for you to have a still similar story to what there was within Avatar, but now show completely new locations and give and provide completely new experiences. And that's what they're really going for here. Another thing also highlighting about the story, and this is where it does get slightly deeper, is that Avatar was supposed to release at the exact same time as Way of the Water, and of course didn't. It's been a year difference, as Way of the Water was released December last year. That's when it was added to cinemas and theaters, and now we're coming up to the 7th of December 2023 until Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is released. But that does mean, going back through this, if you are a hardcore Avatar fan, that there will be a few little bits here and there in terms of the gameplay and the narrative within the game that tells you a bit more about the Way of the Water, because both of these, even though the film came out before, were actually connected in development. And the last thing to talk about is that Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is designed to be a single player game. It's there so that you can go through this massive open world and experience everything that it has to offer by yourself. There is the option, however, to invite another friend if you wish to do so. It isn't couch play, it is co-op. So this will be done through online, you'll need to go and invite a friend, like together, you can then explore the world together. But other than that, it doesn't go any further beyond that. So it says here that additionally, PlayStation players will exclusively get the free cosmetic warrior pack as unlockable content. So there will be cosmetics within the game, especially with an open world game where you can change certain things with your character, maybe not always change facial expressions or go and update your appearance, but you can change out certain clothing, very similar to what you can do with swapping out weapons within your loadout. So this was somewhat expected, but it's not so much to the level where it's going to be full DLC, you needing to go and get all of this different gear and then going into this massive open online world. It is still there and designed for it to be a single player narrative experience as you go through the world, experience what it has to offer, but you can then have a friend tag along with you, or you tag along with a friend if you wish to do so. Overall, with everything that we've gone through, this actually looks like a lot of fun. I was skeptical when it was first announced because I think it was announced back in 2017, maybe slightly after. I'm not 100% sure, but it's been quite a few years. And of course, with this being scheduled to release last year and everything that Ubisoft have done over the past few years, it just has not been good. It really hasn't been good in terms of what they've been producing. But based on what has been revealed so far, even though it doesn't sound perfect, there are parts to this where I have a bit of nostalgia. I see this and do think about Far Cry, and I think about all the good times that I used to have in Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3. And I'm hoping that all of this can be taken back, put into Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, that I can have that feeling whilst also experiencing something completely new. To make this even better, because so far reviews haven't been bad, they haven't been amazing, but they're sort of mid-tier. But to make it slightly better, what needs to happen is the improved gunplay, which we're not going to be able to know until we roll round to the 7th of December. But with all of that, let me know. Is this a game that you're excited for? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you're more excited for other announcements that's happened in December, such as GTA 6, then I highly recommend clicking that video right there, because that goes through everything that we know so far. I hope you enjoy.